Hi, class. I'm going to speak right now, and this is very much inspired, I guess you would say, from the Robert Edgars talk in our week 3 array of presentations. And I'm going to basically disclose a little bit of my background, and then make some connections, of course, with content. And in this case, it's not the nuts and bolts of nonprofit management, but it's rather really more the source of where hopefully your impulses are coming from to be engaged, either within a nonprofit or within a private sector enterprise. That would be noble as well, although what you find in the private sector, and not to be too much of a blanket statement on this, but at its core, the private sector is exploitative. It just is, because it's out to make a profit. It's out to provide services and goods, and it does that very well. It does it very effectively. I'm not anti-capitalist per se, although it's got its problems, but we won't get into that. But what I will say is that the nonprofit side, as I think you're getting a good exposure to, also has its entrepreneurial elements, and certainly Robert Edgars is a testament to that. So take his presentation to heart. I hope you find it as inspiring as I did. My background, and I'll only speak for myself because I don't know your individual motivations. I have a policy that I never judge anybody or try to make any prescriptions without diagnosing. And frankly, one of the problems with an online program is that it's very difficult to diagnose. I don't know your stories. And it would take a while. As I said, I take usually at least a year before I really can fill that role as an advisor. So with that in mind, and with this idea that I'm not going to presume anything, I'll just say that I've had my own, we'll call them limited successes in being effective in the nonprofit world. I've already alluded to being a director of a youth corps program. My interest in that is actually 20 years earlier. My PhD dissertation was on national and community service, and youth service in particular, as a rite of passage to adult citizenship. And this gets into what your motivations may be. They have to come from a personal side. They have to come from your own observations and what inspires you individually to become involved and to make that leap into nonprofit or social entrepreneurship, either as a social entrepreneur, if you have the resource base to do so, or as a community activist, which anybody can do. So as I mentioned, I became very interested in National Youth Service, in part because I observed that one of the things that we're very, very bad about in this country, and not just this country, but the U.S. is particularly bad about this, and that is that we don't have a rite of passage, so that we, in fact, almost go the opposite way. We extend youth. We cocoon people, often in 4-year higher education and beyond. Now, that's not a slam against higher education or a slam against lifelong learning. You are going to be learning, I hope, all of your lives. But we, through our institutional processes, do a lot less to have people actually become fully independent and active and empowered. We instead channel them into things like coursework, and in many cases, and I disclose this often in my presentations early in particularly in undergraduate classes, that I'm an agent of the state. I'm here to control people through determining what you're reading and determining the overall content. I mean, that's the model. It's not what I try to do. It's the system, if you will, that sometimes closes more doors than it opens. And to the extent that, again, I am implicated in that process, I apologize. But back to the point. And again, this is really more inspired from Robert Eggers, but you have to find what that burning yes is. This is what Stephen Covey often refers to begin with the end in mind. What is your legacy going to be? What is it that you want to be remembered for? When you're 80 years old, what are people going to say about you? That's a good point of departure. That's a good place to start from. And then at that point, hopefully you will be reflecting upon your own backgrounds and experiences, and perhaps tragedies and disappointments and frustrations that then may generate what I hope is creative anger, to where you can make things better than they've been. So many of you are from Laredo. Many of you are not. So again, I can't presume to prescribe to you what that's going to be. All I can say is that I hope that through some of the presentations that were made, the Robert Edgar one and a few others, that you begin to sort out and perhaps be able to articulate what you're intuiting already. And that we all have the impulse, I think, at some point to give back. And to some extent by the virtue of the fact that we're in a graduate program, and that, God willing, you're going to be graduating from this with an advanced degree, which gives you a position of advantage and also of obligation. So, call this the midterm pep talk. I'd be very interested to know, and I have, through some of your introductions, some good insights, and it's a very impressive array of people we have in this program who I know are going to make impacts. And then the magnitude of that impact is going to be based upon the skill sets that you're receiving in this program. And then being able to, with your own imagination and your own creativity, begin to find ways to make a difference. There is no template for this. There is no formula for this. And God help you all if you think that the university model is a good one. This is a dying institution, guys. I don't want to be subversive. It's treated me very well. But the future of the university, your sons and daughters are going to have a very different experience. And it won't be a brick and mortar one. The new quad, universities are always designed. They've been designed the same way ever since Al-Azhar University and the University of Bologna. These are the two oldest universities in the world. And they are designed like every other university, virtually every other university, with a quad, where you have an administration building, then on the opposite side, usually a library, and then on one side you'd have probably the building of the humanities, and then the other side of the sciences. Very often that's the layout, the basic layout of most universities, around the quad, and then everything else sort of goes into concentric layering beyond that. What I say to you is that this is the new quad, and this is the world you need to have people prepared for. It's a two-edged sword. It can be alienating, but it can also be mightily engaging. I can be anywhere in the world and be able to hopefully have some impact, or at least also in the opposite way, find myself influenced by what is happening elsewhere. So it's a powerful tool, but it does have its limitations. We have to recognize that. The point being that And this gets back to an original impulse that I have as an educator, and that is, not to reproduce the experience that everybody else has had, not to make you comfortable with a 20th century world, but for you to prepare you and your sons and daughters and the new generation for the worlds that they're going to be living in. So what's that going to look like? I can tell you straight up, if you think it's going to be the car slum of Laredo and of the post-automobile cities of Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Phoenix, no. It's not going to be that. I don't do predictions, but I will do forecasts. There is a very high probability that's not going to be the spaces that we'll even want to be living in. These are not sustainable models. And we have to look at that. We have to wake up to the fact that we need to make some, in my view, very fundamental changes in how we operate and how our society operates. I will speak directly to Laredo. Laredo is an interesting place, even though it's the most boring city in America. In that, when I came to Laredo, and I spent 12 years in Hawaii, so I recognized this pretty early on, is that Laredoans are an island people. And I don't mean that in any dismissive or derogatory way. They're warm, they're generous, they are welcoming, and all that's good. There's a great basis for bona fide community in Laredo. But island people, and there are influences that need to be, I believe, brought in because there's in my view, a bit of complacency, and it comes from a variety of sources, which I won't get into now. But it'll take an external change agent, I believe, to make things different. And that may come with you, but you all have to make that heroic journey. That's what I mean by a rite of passage. A rite of passage involves the heroic journey, to use Joseph Campbell's terminology. You've got to go out and fight the dragons. And it doesn't have to be blood warfare, but it has to be an understanding that complacency is a dragon, and that fatalism is a dragon, and the status quo is a dragon, and Texas A&M International University is a dragon. And it's important that you be able to face that dragon and perhaps against the odds, come up with an alternative and make things better for everyone. Okay, that's the pep talk. We'll carry on. We'll get back to our regular course content already in progress. Thanks very much.